The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderwoman Young, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Schmid, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed,
Here.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderman Bosley, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderman Conway, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Howard, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderman Cone, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, 23 present.
Quorum being present, unless everyone in the chambers and galleries to please rise for prayer. We will be led in prayer today by Reverend Dr. E.G. Shields, Jr. from Mount Beulah Missionary Baptist Church, and he also has accompanying him today First Lady. So let's give the First Lady a round of applause before the
Giving reverence to our Father which art in heaven, to your most esteemed and illustrious and honorable President of this Board of Aldermen, Lewis Reed, to all of you, my brothers and sisters that make up this august body of the St. Louis Board of Aldermen. Join me as we bow and petition the Lord in prayer. God our Father, we come to you now as humbly as we know how. We first off thank you, Lord, for your manifold blessings. We thank you for what you've already done. Secondly, we thank you for what you're doing. Thirdly, O God, we come thanking you for what you shall do. Lord, you have entrusted us to be stewards of your creation. Please lend an ear to our petition of prayer. We pray for our government and the officials thereof. We pray for the leaders of this august body. We pray that you would guide them in mind, body, and spirit. We likewise pray for all of the aldermen and all of the alderwomen and their respective wards. We pray not only for them, but we pray for their families. We pray for their staffs and all that make up this governance. Our prayer is very simple, O God, and that is that you would shadow us with your blessings. We pray for the residents that make up this city of St. Louis. We thank you, O God, for that which you've done for us. We pray now that you would guide us in peace and progress. Continue to allow us to move beyond the pain of the past. We give you all the reverence, the glory, and the honor. And we say, O God, allow us to be mindful of the services that you've entrusted to us. Continue to move this board beyond just political dialogue, but into sensing the heart of the people and the constituency in which they serve. Guide this board as they deliberate and discuss matters at hand. Lead them in making wise and prudent decisions with dignity and honor, remembering the oath that they have pledged. As this board closes their final session for 2014, we pray for your peace and your blessings to cover them until 2015. And then, when they have come back to an assembly of this magnitude again, we petition you yet again for your grace and your mercy. May your light enfold us. May your spirit guide us. May your grace abound in us. This is our prayer that I humbly ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
We'll suspend with our regular order of business, take up our courtesy resolution calendar. I move for adoption of our courtesy resolution calendar and obtain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 26th. Alderwoman from the 28th, would you like to approach the dais?
Oh, it'll be all right. Good morning, everyone. This morning, one of our longest-serving colleagues, I guess it would be our longest-serving colleague, Phyllis Young, has announced her retirement. And if we can find Phyllis right now, we'll bring her up if she wouldn't mind. And Jim, we'd love to have you join us also, if you can find your wife. Oh, good. I didn't have an agenda. Yeah, you didn't know you were first. Good to see you. It's really my distinct pleasure this morning to present this resolution to Phyllis Young. And if you'll bear with me for just a minute, I am going to read it. Whereas Alderwoman Phyllis Young is resigning her position as representative of the 7th Ward after almost 30 years of stellar service to the city of St. Louis. And whereas Phyllis graduated from Roosevelt High School and then University of Missouri at Columbia, she stayed for a master's program in teaching children with behavioral issues. Maybe that's why she's so good here. I never thought of that before. She returned to St. Louis and taught for the Special School District of St. Louis County for 13 years, whereas she and her husband, Jim, moved into their house in Soulard in 1978. She became active in the neighborhood as well as local politics. She served as president of the Soulard Restoration Group and as a board member for a number of years. As a member of Neighborhood Housing Services, as a board member and president for St. Agatha Daycare Center, and volunteered in many capacities throughout the neighborhood. She was also president of the 7th Ward Independent Democratic Organization and worked on many campaigns. Whereas Phyllis was elected 7th Ward Alderman after a hard-fought primary in 1985, she has served as chairwoman of the Residential Development Committee, Parks and Environmental Matters, Streets, Traffic and Refuse, Ways and Means, Legislation, Transportation and Commerce, and the Public Safety Committees. And whereas Phyllis has played a very significant role in many amazing changes to the city of St. Louis, from the downtown lofts filled with residents to reborn neighborhoods, from an expanded convention center to the Renaissance Hotel, the beautifully renovated downtown St. Louis Public Library, the Metropolitan Square Building, Southside Early Childhood Center, the new Busch Stadium, and Ballpark Village. Whereas she was awarded the John H. Pelker Lovey-Stone Award that recognizes leadership, extraordinary vision, and personal commitment in advancing the revitalization of downtown St. Louis. Whereas for the past 29-plus years, Alderwoman Young has been a guiding force in the Christmas program, which is a cooperative effort by the agencies of Guardian Angel Settlement, Kingdom House, and St. Vincent's Church to provide assistance at the holidays for families and seniors who might otherwise have very little to celebrate. And whereas Phyllis has always served with integrity and civility, always balancing the interests of residents and businesses. The downtown Soulard, Lafayette Square, LaSalle Park, Kings Heights, Benton Park, Compton Heights, Fox Park, and surrounding neighborhoods have all benefited and improved from her enlightened leadership. And whereas Phyllis will enjoy her retirement, gardening, trying new restaurants, traveling, spending time with her many friends and siblings, and an adorable nephew in Texas. And now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the City of St. Louis that we pause in our deliberations to express our sincere appreciation to Alderwoman Phyllis Young for her outstanding contributions to the Board, the residents of the 7th Ward, the City of St. Louis as a whole. We further wish Phyllis the best in her retirement and to say that her wisdom, charm, and always pleasant demeanor will be missed at the Board. We will direct the clerk of the Board to spread a copy of the resolution across the minutes of these proceedings and prepare a commemorative copy. So, Phyllis, that was long-winded. The type is very small on here because of all of Phyllis's many accomplishments. And I personally, we didn't say this in the resolution, but Phyllis has also served sort of as the unofficial chairman of the Women's Caucus here at the Board of Aldermen, and we will miss her in that role as well. Thank you for doing that, Phyllis. So I'd like to present this to you, and of course we'll take comments. Thank you. There we go.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to take a moment just to thank Phyllis for her years of service as alderman. She's been down here nearly as long as I've been alive. Not to rub it in, Phyllis. But, I respect greatly your institutional knowledge. I know that there have been challenges and differences and the like over the years, and I can speak only for myself, as a young person coming down to this board. When I, implemented certain, programs in the neighborhood, I would, oftentimes come and sit down in your office, and you would reflect on some of the things that you've done as well and impart your wisdom. And, told me that this is always a learning process and every day is a new adventure down here at the board. And, after, 30 years or nearly 30 years at that point in time, that you're still learning things every day. And that was a great comfort to me during times of adversity. And so I just really want to thank you so much for the comfort and assurances and the wisdom over the years. It's meant a great deal to me. And look forward to knitting with you in your post-aldermanic career. Hopefully I get invited to some of the stitching, and I'll leave out the other word that comes along with that. But I really enjoyed your friendship and leadership down here, and we'll miss you greatly. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd just like to say that I'm glad that I had the opportunity to work with Phyllis. I mean, I don't think I could do 29 years at this job, and I commend you for doing that. It's funny how I had memories of you before I really knew you. I remember we were canvassing in my mother's district, and we had our walk sheets, and we knocked on your door, and I was like, wow, that's Phyllis Young's door. And so it's just so many memories, so many stories. Thank you for your leadership and your guidance, because we definitely share some downtown issues, and I just hope you enjoy your retirement and just take a break from it all, and thank you. And also, when we get to Survivor Island down here, I'm glad that I won't have to butt up against you, so thank you for retiring soon.
Alderwoman from the 13th.
President, members of the board, I said I haven't had a long opportunity to work with Phyllis, but I know over the years from observation and reputation that this board and the 7th Ward and the city are certainly much better off for your service. And thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 8th.
Good morning, Mr. President and members of the board. It is with a heavy heart that I see Alderwoman Young leave this board. I came down here, I think we kind of called her one of the shame-o kids because she came in during that era. And we didn't get off all that well, but over time she won over my heart and my mind on many of the issues. Sometimes she got me in trouble when she came up with some idea or asked me to co-sponsor something. But she had a calm demeanor and a deliberative process in how she went about her business. And I think she was a calming influence on this board and many of these members. And that made this a better place all of these years. So thank you so much, Phyllis.
Alderman from the 20th.
This is sort of like graduation, only it took you a lot longer than 4 years. I always get sort of sentimental when I think about these times. I remember when I used to go across the floor and talk to Mary Ross all the time, and Bob Ruggieri, Alderman Greg Carter, some people who are no longer with us in body, but certainly their influence and their work continue on at this board and throughout the city. I remember folks who are still with us and are still doing great things like Marty Abusi and Dan McGuire, Fred Wessels. All of these folks, and I even look around the room currently and all the great experiences that people have that fill in the large gaps that all the rest of us have, and part of that democratic process of figuring out what that experience is. I wish I had known some of your teaching experience, but filling in is part of the conversation because it's so important. You have been very much involved in the environmental efforts down here, coming with your Prius every day, and I don't know if I know your husband is on the bicycle every day. I don't know if you do some of that when we're not watching. I remember when we were engaged together on the 2004 Seems Like Ancient History Sustainable Neighborhood effort. When you came to the board, as I understand it, they were they beginning or I guess on the Metropolitan Square building? There was a hole there, and there was a restaurant across the street that was kind of falling into that hole. And there were a couple of major shopping centers, one of which no longer exists in downtown, and one that is still going strong and has changed its efforts over at Union Station. I think I will always sort of picture you as being surrounded by all of these attorneys who wanted to get your ear and had different opinions about very, very major issues. I cannot imagine what it must be like to have as one of your neighborhoods downtown. And that neighborhood has changed immensely from a time when basically people came in to see a ball game or a sports event and did some shopping and then got out of Dodge, to a place where there are people living here all the time, 10,000 or more people, I guess, which is incredible to me. I want to thank you for your confidence in terms of having me the last year or so as the vice chair. I don't know if that was intentional or not. I've had the ability to work with you on a number of things, such as the Prop S monies, going to some of the preservation meetings, and so forth. So you have worked on a lot of issues that are important to this city, and I know that you brought that same talent to your other neighborhoods, because downtown was only part of your obligation as an alderwoman. Thank you for your service, and we will need that experience down here in some way, so I'm sure that you will still be around to offer that, particularly to your neighborhoods and hopefully to us as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 12th.
Members of the board. Phyllis, you've probably been one of the martyrs down here as long as you've been around. I actually was working out in front of City Hall when Phyllis filed for alderman back then, and I made the mistake of saying there's no way you can win. And I've always reminded her that I did say that, and it was all in fun. But Phyllis, I know you've done a great job down here. You've made a big impact down here. You've been a loyal representative of the 7th Ward and always had your constituents in the city, kept it in your mind to be the best. I personally think you've done a great job. I've enjoyed working with you in the short years that I've been here, but we've actually known each other probably longer than a lot of people think. So I just want to tell you thank you for all your hard work and effort that you have put in down here, and I wish you luck. You and your husband can enjoy a lot of time together and do some traveling. Thank you.
Alderman from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I myself try not to get sentimental on situations like this. I always try to look at the positive part of it. And I guess one of the most positive parts that no one's mentioned yet, I can't believe that we all bump up a notch in seniority. Yourself and Fred have both blessed us in the last year. So, but I know you're not going far, and I occasionally get to see you when you're walking the dogs. So you kind of always know where to find me. So, but I wish you the best, and I know you're going to keep walking and keep your eyes out for the Soulard neighborhood and probably all the other neighborhoods, because, the election comes up, we're going to be aldermen less in the 7th Ward for a couple of months. So we wish you the best, and we'll see you in the neighborhood.
Alderwoman from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. We missed you by 1 year. My parents and I lived at 922 Rudger, so you would have been our alderman had we not moved out. And so I do remember some of the pictures of you, so it's amazing how time has gone. But I want to make sure that the person who's thinking about replacing you, if you've played the same trick on them that so many others in the past do when they leave office, they actually tell people that we're only here once a week for an hour on Fridays, which we all know is absolutely not true. And you have put so many hours and so much time, and I so appreciate it. And as I've said to everyone else who's retiring, please take that wealth of information and serve on boards in your spare time, because we certainly could use it. Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Phyllis, I had to look at the class composite when I was coming in today, trying to think of what that was in 1999 when I first got here. And it wasn't many women here. And you and Fred Wessels were probably the first ones to reach out to me to help me, to give me an idea of what it was like. You actually gave me physical letters, and you were a sounding board for me. It was a little rough when I first got here, and I just appreciate you helping me, reaching out, being a friend, and congratulations.
Any further discussion? Any further? Alderman from the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. Mr. President, I certainly rise to sing the praises of the lady from the 7th Ward. Over the last two major pieces of legislation that the Alderwoman sponsored, in my humble opinion, one was worse than the other. Alderman, you led off with was the Birkenstock bill before or after the reduction in the size of the board? I'm not sure. If you remember the Birkenstock bill, where we're bringing in that major concert this summer, and I certainly got feisty with the alderman, and let me just say that she was as polite as usual, completely above board. I have nothing but the utmost respect for the way that she handled herself here at the board. I would be the third villa that she's had to deal with in her years here. And I asked her earlier this week which one was her favorite, and she said, "You've got to be kidding." So she didn't answer. But Phyllis and Woody, I wish you the very best. I think that you will be missed here. You gave the city of St. Louis and the people of the 7th Ward a lot of your time and talent. Most of your adult life was given to city service. We won't forget that. I think the people, we owe you a debt of gratitude that runs deep, and don't be a stranger. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Alderwoman from the first.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'm glad so many people have positive memories of Phyllis. When I came here, I came first time 3 months after the alderman from the 8th, and we were scholars of the 15th Ward, Alderwoman Geraldine Osborne, although she would kill me to say that because she was always wanting to be called Alderman. But when I met Phyllis, Merritt was sitting there, Phyllis was sitting there. A lot of what we talked about, I thought we had the same goals and common interests, which was the furtherance of women on the board and to respect other women on the boards and differences. But what I found out as I sat here in my memories, and I sat here for 12 years before I was gerrymandered out of my seat with a bill sponsored by Phyllis Young, was that there was a lot of things that she sponsored that excluded people. Everybody got their memories, I get mine, okay? And so my memories of her were of her sponsoring bills in which she wanted to exclude people from the riverfront. And I look at the riverfront now and I'm sad because the riverfront that I knew and grew up and dated my husband was a place that was inclusive, and I found it to be very, after her bills in which we didn't want anybody doing anything, it is really a sad indication of how to exclude people. Of course, everybody knows I'm going to talk about redistricting. I'm going to do that, and it was really brought home today because a few days ago, because the president and I were at the funeral of Judge Calvin on Saturday, and it was at the church right across the street from my home. But also who was there was the alderman, former alderman of the 20th Ward, Steve Roberts. And the president and I and Alderman Roberts, we presented a resolution to Judge Calvin's family. And Judge Calvin lived in the 20th Ward and was my neighbor and swore me in. And Steve Roberts was who I ran against to come down here originally. But we sat down many times since that time, and we worked together, and we talked about what had been done to the 20th Ward and the disrespect to my neighborhood and the problems that my neighborhood have because a bunch of white people got together and made a decision about what should happen to my community. So when I hear people talking about how important their community is, and I look at what's going on now with Ferguson and everything that's going on, and with the city of St. Louis, it is because people really don't get that leadership isn't about white people sitting down and telling black people who their leaders are. Leadership is when you sit down and know who is a leader, and then you have to sit down with them. When you sponsor things to tear up something that's successful, that's not leadership. That's awful. When you add to it that you sponsored a bill that kept 90% of my ward for voting for 6 years, and we're supposed to vote every 4 years down here. So now I've taken it to the right people, and they even say it's plain as daylight that it was not a bill for redistricting. It was a bill that was something else, and that's illegal. And the reason I get up here, and I'm going to talk about it every time until it's put back, is because too many black people and some white people fought and died about my right to vote. And so to come down here at this Board of Aldermen and have a woman sponsor something in which we both had to have amendments to the Constitution to vote, not to mention I had to have 2. And to have you sponsor something that kept me from voting 6 years, I'm never going to forget that. I'm always going to remember it. This board is going to remember it until it's addressed. Voting rights regulations were put in place because black people have been enslaved. Women have not been enslaved, but almost. And so we have these things that we did to try to make things fair. Then to come down here and to work so hard in my career and to stand up to each and every time to have an election, which I did each time, and then to have this board willy-nilly decide that they're going to move my ward at a time when this board lost 30% white population. They played a shell game that most people don't understand. I actually have my resolution. I was going to introduce it today, but I'm going to introduce it when we come back, about this whole shell game. As I've explained it to people, now they get it. You can't lose 30% of a white population and gain a white ward. That's what they did. They moved my ward, they put it down there, they called it the 20th ward as though it could be the 20th ward. We know who we are in the 20th ward, and the president knows this. When we were at the funeral, and I told the people there, this is the real 20th ward. Most of black community still calls it the 20th ward because it is. And what you did was illegal, and it's terrible, and it would be okay if it was done to me personally, because something that's personal to me, that's politics. But when you pass legislation down here and you sponsor it, and Phyllis and I, this to tell you guys a little bit of how this happened, we marched around to the mayor's office because she said she really didn't want to do this, so I'm not going to put it all on you. I'm going to put it on you, the responsibility of saying no. And we marched around to Francis Slade's office, and he was almost jumping out of his skin about us coming around there. But the fact of it is, she still sponsored it. I came back here in 2013, and one of the things I saw her do in the last year or so is she stripped the black fire marshal of his duties. And that was so hurtful to me, because this man had just sued the city of St. Louis and won a lawsuit. And then Phyllis came along and stripped him of his power because, as she said, he was too slow in getting his things done. Yet, when I watched, and what I saw was that we had almost $500,000 stolen from the Parks Department. And just tell you, one of the people, Joe Baca, that was my go-to guy. So when they first put his name out there, just to be honest, I defended him to the end. I said, I don't believe it. It's not true. But at the end, Joe Baca pled. But what I looked at is that he had a boss, and nothing was done to that boss. Gary Best, he's retiring today, and as I understand it, we'll see that Phyllis may be taking his place. But nothing was done to Gary Best. But a black man, you say, is too slow, and he gets stripped of his duties, but a white man is at the head of a department in which $500,000 disappears. He goes, oop, I didn't know anything, and nothing happens. That's what I call, it's not even covert racism, because a lot of times covert racism happens down here. It's what I call overt racism, that we hold black people to a different standard. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You could go in, and you could go in. I didn't see her, you could talk about this, I did not see any sponsoring of a bill to strip him of his duties, because after all, you're in charge. That didn't happen. But you did strip Charlie Coyle of his duties, and I know that it was the mayor that wanted you to do it, but there's something in which you have to be able to say no to things. When I came down here, the first thing people did was thought I was going to help strip you of your duties, the president, but I didn't do that, okay? So you and Deanna were part of the black people that still left it. I didn't do that, because there are some things I say no to, okay? There's some things that I say no to about Phyllis Young that I went ahead and supported. But I am never going to support this redistricting. I'm never going to be okay with it. And if people think that it's all right to be and speak good things about her.
Alderman from the 11th.
I respectfully raise a point of order. I would ask that the Alderwoman from the 1st Ward refrain from using last names in floor debate. That violates parliamentary procedure. And I know her motions are running high, but the Alderwoman and I had this discussion last week, and so I would ask that she refrain from using last names. Thank you.
And I would most certainly respect the Alderman from the 11th.
Point of order, well taken. Alderwoman from the 1st, please refer to
in fact, we're not supposed to use first names either. Yeah. So if we're going to do that, we're supposed to say alderpersons from the wards. But I respect the Alderman from the 11th, because he was the president when I came here, and I learned a lot under him. So I do respect that. And so I won't use last names. In fact, I was done. I'm done. I am glad Phyllis is gone, because I am glad that I won't have to look at the person who I considered when I came down here a friend that would do something like that. I'm glad that her husband is here, because mine was sitting here when you did it in my community. I'm glad that my community won't have to turn on this TV and watch the person who I had to then explain to people why they had to keep voting. Because people said to me, I'm not going to vote anymore, Ms. Tyus, because they did that to us. That was not done to me alone. I'm a big kid. But it was done to a community, and to my dying breath, until it is put back. I'm going to keep doing that. And for that reason, I don't have good memories of Phyllis Young. I have memories of, of the Alderman from the 7th. I have memories of a person who passed restrictive laws and who struck out at a community because if you had a problem with me, then you go with me. You don't strike it in my community. And then think it's all right that I would come back here, because I told you all 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I would be back here to address this issue, and I'm back here, and I'm going to continue to address it. And for that reason, I don't have pleasant memories of the alderman from the 7th, and for all these other black aldermen who are standing here. It didn't just affect the 20th Ward. It affected each and one of your wards. It affected all of North St. Louis. It affected our power. It affected our money. It's something much more bigger than that, and because you maybe haven't studied or don't understand it, this was not a little thing. This is how people do to try to keep power that doesn't belong to them, and I am forever going to be addressing it until it is corrected. We are supposed to at least have 14 or 15 black aldermen down here, and Phyllis Young was one of the first people that, I'm so sorry, the alderman from the 7th sponsored a bill in which she started the decline of representation in the African American community, and for that matter, I am glad she's leaving.
Thank you. Alderman from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Phyllis, I love you madly. I'll miss you terribly. Please come by the tavern and have a drink with me. Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I stand to rise because I do recognize that when you have an opportunity to provide part of your life to a cause, all of it is not going to be grand or great. I know because I've been there. I've been serving for a number of years. I do know that when I first came to the Board of Aldermen, I had a lot of clashes down here because, you know, I don't have a lot of patience, and the wheels turn slow, and people have different directions and ideas. But at the end of my debates and at the end of my concerns, whether it was actions or words or pen to paper, I always walk out the door and I leave it here. But I want to share with you just a few things that I do know about Phyllis. You see, Phyllis and I go way back at the beginning of the Renaissance of Lafayette Square. I was there when a lot of people thought that they could take those huge, humongous houses and just run in there and make it right all of a sudden. But it took a whole lot of work, a lot of money, and about 5 different restarts within 10 years. And, you know, we all had places where we hung out. We hung out at the coffee shop with Pat and Pat. We hung out with Sarah and Sarah. We hung out and we talked about this city. This city has a place for all of us to add to its need and its glory. And as you know, we're going through a lot of things right now. So we're going to find missteps from all of us in our histories. I'm sure I got some people mad at me about the DSEG settlement. I'm sure I got some people mad at me about a number of things. And I truly understand and I give respect to positions and all of that. But I did have to say to you, you did give us part of your life, actually the major part of your adult life, to the city of St. Louis. And so I do respect that part of it. I wish you well in your retirement. I'm sure I will see you around in various endeavors. Thank you.
Alderman from the 18th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've been standing here for a minute.
Oh, you went back for a while.
I know, I moved. Thank you. To the Alderwoman from the 7th. You know, anytime there's an ending of something, it always opens up the door for something new. And we're here at that precipice, where we see the ending of your time period here at the Board of Aldermen and the opening of a new opportunity, you and your life personally and here at the board. Because yes, the other alderman was correct, we move up in seniority. We are able to choose new committees, or at least new committee chairs, it opens up an opportunity. Certainly your stay here has been impactful. Whether people agree with it or not, with the things that you have done and said, it has been impactful. You have made some imprint upon the city of St. Louis. But we're here at this precipice of the time of new opportunities. May you enjoy your supposed to be retirement, because you and I have already talked about what you plan on doing. May you enjoy your opportunity to not have to come down here. May you enjoy your opportunity to serve this community in different ways. I hope that you will continue to keep a dialogue open, because there's some real serious issues that this city needs to address of race and economics and gender and orientations, and you bring something to the table in that discussion. And so, though this ends your tenure here at the board, it opens up this new opportunity for you in your life. May you enjoy this retirement, have lots of fun. May your life be filled with enjoyment and happiness as you leave this board and go to a new part of your life. Now, we didn't have to lock your door to keep you from coming in to give you a hint to retire. We didn't have to stick gum all over your table to get you to leave. We didn't have to change the signs on your door and put somebody else's name to give you a hint. You decided to do this on your own. And here we stand at this historical event. I have a photograph that I want to share of you when you first came. You're standing behind Red Villa, Samuel Kennedy, and a few others, and Joanne Wayne was sitting there at the time. So when I find it again, I'll be able to get it to you. Enjoy your retirement. Thank you.
Alderman, 22nd.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. First of all, Phyllis, congratulations. Anyone that can serve nearly 30 years, 30 plus years with an institution is a phenomenal feat, especially if you're a public official. You know, someone who has to serve unselfishly, someone who has to give a lot of their time, be away from their family. Serving the city of St. Louis can be a challenge, not just serving your ward, but serving all residents of the city of St. Louis. Because as the Alderman from the 18th said, what we do is impactful in some kind of way, not just in our ward, but certainly in the city of St. Louis as a whole. And I like to say that, you know, leadership is about courage too. And it's about courage to take on the tough issues. We may not always agree with each other. What I appreciate with you is even though I disagreed with you on some bills that you sponsored, and you may have disagreed with me, we were still able to have conversation and dialogue. And because we sat right next to each other, it made it easier to have a relationship because we can disagree without being so disagreeable and mean-spirited about it. I appreciate your tenacity to get things done. I appreciate all the work that you've put in, not only in the 7th Ward. As the resolution said, our downtown is an incredible place today because of your leadership. I appreciate you. I thank you. I know many people at this board thanks you. I'm sure your husband is glad you'll be coming home and spend more time with him, maybe. But Phyllis, please enjoy your retirement and do something fun.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 17th.
Yes, Mr. President. I must be getting a little sentimental or loopy in my time down here as I spend time here. I was scheduled to be on a business trip today, and when our colleague, can I refer to a former alderman by his first name?
Yeah, he doesn't have
last spring, I missed. I was out of town on a family vacation when Fred retired, and I really regretted not being down here then. So I was supposed to be out of town today, and I canceled my trip so I could come down here. I guess I'm getting a little loopy, but Phyllis is the last alderperson who was down here when I first came down here. Now, there are two that were down here before and came back, but I don't care how long I'm down here. If I leave, I'm not ever going to come back. So I won't have to be worried about being that loop. Of course, that's our colleague from the 3rd and the 11th Ward. I was particularly touched by the Alderwoman from the 7th's letter, talking about how when she first came to the city, she worked with, again, Ray Leisure, and we have memories of those times as being such a simpler time and so different and warm and fuzzy, and I like to think that there are some vestiges of that time down here on the board. Certainly, Alder Red Villa's son, Tom, brings his sense of humor and his practical view of the world with him. And of course, Alderman Kennedy, the Alderman from the 18th, surely shares his father's commitment to the treatment of all people fairly and with respect, and has his father's well-known, soft-spoken, understated demeanor, and yet his perseverance in pursuing those goals. But last week, when someone was talking about using, I guess, telling some of the younger Alderwoman that somehow or another, when the Alderwoman from the 7th would retire, that would be an opportunity to go ahead and create some reform, I just wanted to kind of set the record straight. The bar is set by the Alderwoman from the 7th so incredibly high that regardless of what all of us do down here, we'll never be able to attain it. And for us to fully understand that, I think we need to take a step back and remember what it was like in St. Louis in the 80s. If you go back to then, the papers were filled with car bombings that were occurring on the streets, sidewalks, and garages of our city. Bill McCullen famously remarked in his column that one of the aldermen serving between Phyllis and Ray Leisure set a record that is unlikely to be matched by any future alderman, and that the time between he was sworn in and indicted and arrested was less than 24 hours. The papers were filled with transcripts of secret wiretaps that the FBI had. We heard stories about hitmen being escorted out of the Mayfair Hotel. We had campaign workers that were being beaten. The president of the board was indicted and ultimately pled guilty for cable TV. There was voter fraud.
Different
president.
Several presidents.
The last bastion of organized crime was the 7th Ward, and they didn't want to give that up easily. And it took a school teacher with a Gandhi-like persona to go ahead and end that reign. And that contribution and the colleagues that she, and she was the leader. There's a group of people that were involved in it, but Phyllis was the leader, and she did that. We'll never, regardless of whatever we do down here, we'll never be able to make a contribution like that. Now, we live in a time, and Phyllis, where these hot issues, and we're all concerned about them and everything. Phyllis is so far ahead of the curve on so many of these issues. My dad was a friend of Ray Leisure, and he used to come back and talk about Ray Leisure complaining about the historians. Well, the historians were the young people that were moving in to Soulard and restoring the homes of Soulard and Lafayette Square. And of course, we have the leader of the historians with us today. For those, we have an aldermanic courtesy down here, and I know it's an antiquated thing, but we go ahead and we give a lot of latitude to the alderman, whoever represents the ward, so that they make their decisions. And we do that because the complexity of these decisions sometimes and the ramifications of them are we got enough stuff in our own ward. How do we really know what other people are dealing with in their ward between their community and so forth? So there's been It's so easy to sit back and be critical of somebody about a decision here or an a decision there, but you have to take a look at somebody's life in a totality. And occasionally somebody might grump about something about historic building getting torn down or whatever, but the record is, and this is going to be a record that I can never imagine being broken. It's like, you know, forget Babe Ruth's record being broken. I cannot imagine that this record will ever be broken. The Alderwoman from the 7th will have handled more legislation to save more historic buildings than anyone, not only in the city, but in the state of Missouri. And that is her legacy. Talk about environment. When I came down here, the prevailing, the overwhelming feeling of the Board of Aldermen was that the environment was something that was relegated to national parks and perhaps coastal drilling. There is really no place in city government to deal with environment. Phyllis was so ahead of the time. She's the first Prius I ever saw was the one that she was driving. And I have to laugh. I would come into the office sometimes at odd times, and Phyllis would be in there shivering with a shawl around her. And what are you doing down here? She and Jim were trying to make a zero environmental footprint, and the house had gotten so cold that she had to come down here to warm up. I think it's cheating when you do that, Phyllis. But she was thinking globally and acting locally 27 years ago. There's countless other times and issues that we can talk about that she was ahead of the game, whether it's reforming city charter, gay rights, any number. But she was there. Her greatest contribution, though, is what she's done for downtown. We all have our neighborhoods, and we're proud of our neighborhoods and and what we do there. But downtown is where we go to celebrate. Downtown is where we go to protest. Downtown is where we go to be sad as a community. It's what brings us together. Downtown is the face of our community to the rest of the world. And that's where most of the big projects come in. And, of course, the mayors for all the big projects. And as the Alderwoman for downtown, it was Phyllis's job and responsibility to make sure that those projects happened. And, of course, any of us who happen to be mad at the mayor at any given time would go ahead and use that project as a basis to go ahead and let the mayor know. So I cannot count the times down here where I witnessed Phyllis taking a beating or her project taking a beating because someone else was mad at the mayor. And she did that quietly, Gandhi-like, without any personal vendettas, never taking anything personally, quietly sticking straight to the issue at hand, which was trying to make our city a better place. And she did that so well, and she frequently did that for mayors that she didn't particularly care for, but she still did it because she kept focused on what was good for the city. When you hold elected office, it's a real honor, and it's a real privilege. And most people spend their life, and the way they shape their environment is maybe redoing a bathroom or fixing their house. When we come down here and we become elected, we have an opportunity to change not our house or our bathroom, but our neighborhood. And that's a real privilege and an honor, and Phyllis has done that with great distinction. And I am very, very honored to have known her, considered her my colleague and friend for the last 27 years.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from 11? You good? Phyllis, I also just want to add my thanks and congratulations for a job well done. You know, when I was Alderman in the 6th Ward, we shared borders. And I remember when I first came in, you included me in all the things that was going on in the 7th Ward, like your basket giveaway and all that type of stuff, to make sure that I was involved in the things that happened within your ward. I remember, and Alderman from the 17th talked about aldermanic courtesy. I remember working with you in Lafayette Square and how you always made sure that there was a balance there and I had the resources and everything I needed to do my job as a freshman alderman, and I thank you for that. And the residents of Lafayette Square benefited because of that. The residents of Soulard benefited because of that. You know, my son's 18 now, and he thinks he knows everything about the world. Right? I can't tell him anything that he feels like I already know it. I know I know it, right? And I look at a lot of the young progressives now, and they look at it and they look at some of the people who have been out there in the field working on this stuff every day, and they say, no, I can do it better, I know it. And the fact of the matter is, they're working off of a canvas that's almost finished. Because if you think about what Soulard was before you came, and it took a true reformer to turn that around. It took a true reformer to get on the back of the things that we had to do in Lafayette Square to turn that community around. So I thank you for that. And the citizens and residents of the city have benefited because of that. My family has benefited because of it. And I'll say this, and I'm saying this for other people, not you, because you know and a lot of us know, but the people who watch this. The business we're in isn't an easy business. It's a calling. It's, it is not easy coming to committees and having disagreements and working through those to whatever the solution is. But that's the system we have in America, and it is still one of the greatest systems on the planet. Except for maybe Congress managed to make it fail over and over again. Other than that, we get things done. And it leaves for an opportunity for opinions across all the various different populations that everybody represents to be accounted for. And you've done a good job of making sure that opinions were accounted for, so I cannot thank you enough. And I know your husband's a bike rider, and you're a cyclist also, and I know you're going to enjoy your time on your bikes. So thank you, and congratulations, Phyllis, for a job well done.
Now I get to talk, and I want to say thank you all for the many thoughts and well wishes you've provided for me today. It's been an honor to serve here, and as you all know, it takes a whole village to be down here in the first place, because we are dependent on our constituents, and many of those constituents are not easy to deal with, as you all know. But there's some that you always count on. And so with that, I'd like to recognize Ed Bushmeyer, Louise Tonkovich. Ed and Louise were my tenants when I started. And so he's gone on. Actually, he was down here at City Hall first. But then also I'd like to thank Peter and Leslie Sortino, because they were knocking doors for me when I first started. There's so many people in the past that were so helpful to me, and I wouldn't be here without them. Craig was right. I've had a lot of legislation down here. Joe recognized that too. There have been times when there were boxes piled around my desk, and the lawyers were changing the legislation as fast as they could pull the papers out of the boxes. So we've killed lots of trees doing legislation here. My goal had been to make sure that my neighborhoods were strong, from Soulard all the way out to Grand, and I feel that we've accomplished that. If you drive through Lafayette Square, Soulard, Fox Park, Benton Park was mine, all those neighborhoods now have a great deal more home ownership than they ever had before. I pulled out, as I was cleaning things, a list of vacant buildings from the 90s, and I looked through those, and I'm very proud to see all the buildings now that were vacant have homeowners in them, and they are beautiful. When I first started, downtown was such that you could bowl through the streets at nighttime because there wasn't any traffic. Now there are people on the streets, people with their dogs, people with babies. Everybody is out, and that's a wonderful difference that has occurred. But our prime job down here has been to provide for our city and it's more than a ward situation for each of us. We are here to provide for the public's jobs, for their economic well-being, health, because health of children with lead and seniors who have blood pressure problems, all those things have to be accommodated. We are here to provide public safety. We are here to respect our neighbors in our neighborhood. And we all have to say that all our neighborhoods are now neighborhoods that are mixed neighborhoods ethnically, because when you look around, the neighborhoods have black and white, Bosnian, Ethiopian, Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese. Our city has become multicultural, and we have to respect the differences in those and bring them together so that everybody wants their family to be safe, they want to have jobs, and they want to be able to enjoy the parks that we have and the beautiful businesses and streets and go out and just have fun. That's what our goal is, to make our city better, and each of you face that challenge each day. And I respect you greatly for the job you're doing. I know there are lots of big conversations to occur in the future, and I will be watching you have those. While I'm doing my thing out in the neighborhoods, I hope that you're watching each other and talking to each other to make this city even greater than it is now. And I'm going to enjoy my retirement. I'd like to thank my husband for always being there to support me, and now I'll be home to bother him. So thank you all.
I just asked Phyllis if she wanted to, as the vice president, run the balance of this meeting, and I'll go back and take her seat. She said, no, I don't think so. So I don't think so. So, but congratulations. Oh.
Anybody else want to come up? Yep.
Anybody from the board that would like to come up, come on up and line up on the steps.
Come on in, Alderwoman. Hold on, everybody's not here yet.
Yeah. It's been moved by me, second by the Alderman from 26, that we adopt our courtesy resolution calendar. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That will return our regular order of business. Introduction of honored guests. Alderman from the 9th.
I'd like to have for my honored guest today, Maureen McDonald from the St. Louis Association of Realtors. Officer Tom Walsh, Officer Joe Steiger, and he's also the president of the Police Officers Association, and Ronnie Auer, and I think that's everyone this time.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have 3 people as my honored guests this morning. Mr. Kenneth Jones, former alderman for the 22nd Ward. And Chris Pickle and Leroy Grant with AT&T.
Alderman from 13th.
Mr. President, members of the board, I would like to have my honored guest, my predecessor, Fred Wessels, whose shoes I am constantly trying to fill. He is currently the director of the CDC.
Yeah, congrats.
Welcome.
Director. Welcome, Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to welcome, as always, Demetrius Alford from the Local 73. Thank you.
Alderman from the 20th.
Mr. President, members of the board, we are honored today to have as our special guest Keith Taylor, who's the Director of Organizing for the Carpenters District Council, and along with him Mark Dalton, who's the Political Director for Carpenters District Council.
Alderman from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my special guest today my husband, Jim Young, Ed Bushmeyer, and Kenny Jones, my former colleague.
Alderman from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my special guest today Mike Grady from the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, Local 562.
Alderman from the 26th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I'd like to have as my special guest today Mr. Leonard Johnson, Chief Deputy of the Treasurer's Office, and also the former Comptroller, Verbies Jones. Thank you.
Alderman from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I would like to have as my special guest today Anthony Lancio with AGC and Gina Hackenworth with the CLE.
Alderman from the 27th.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I'd like to have as my special guest Rachel Smith from the Circuit Attorney's Office. Thank you.
Any further introductions? We also have with us our licensed collector, Mavis Thompson. Thanks for joining us. And Jerome Murray, a longtime personal friend of mine, and a lot of you also. His birthday was this week, so happy birthday, Jerome. Alderman from the 10th, like to wrap us up.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, as we gather here on December 12th, which is Frank Sinatra's birthday, and also Sammy Davis's birthday, Jr. And we say farewell to Phyllis. And I just want to know, Beth, when you're trying to fill Mr. Wessel's shoes, are those his high heels that he was wearing the other night? I saw him out in.
And he can't even respond today. Go ahead.
All right. Today is National Ding-a-ling Day. And our clerk counsel is sporting the uniform, if you see him walking around. That is the official uniform for National Ding-a-ling Day. And we're also happy to have the spokesperson, the Alderman from the 23rd, will be signing autographs for National Ding-a-ling Day in the back office. Thank you.
Yeah. Also have with us my committee woman, Ollie Stewart, and some of the other residents from the ward. Let's give them a round of applause, and thank you for coming out today. All right. We will dispense with line item number 5, report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in sections A, B, and C of the agenda and have been placed in all aldermen's mailboxes. I have from His Honor the Mayor the following correspondence. Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individual for reappointment to the Euclid South Special Business District, the appointment of John McElwain, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2018. I respectfully request your approval of this appointment. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Euclid South Special Business District.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to move that we accept that appointment.
Moved by Alderman from the 17th, seconded by Alderman from the 22nd. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individual for appointment to the Tower Grove South Concerned Citizen Special Business District. The appointment of Laura McCaskey, whose term will expire on December the 31st, 2018. The appointment of Travis Lux, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2018. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 15th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Tower Grove South Concerned Citizen Special Business District.
Yes, Mr. President, I would like to move to accept the appointment.
Moved by the Alderman on the 15th, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individual for appointment to the local Central Business District. The appointment of Samuel Coleman, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2015. I respectfully request your approval of this appointment. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the local Central Business District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, on behalf of the Alderwoman from the 6th, I would like to approve the appointments for the Locust Central Business District.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individual for appointment to the Riverfront Hotel Community Improvement District. The appointment of Osby Warren, whose term will expire on May the 18th, 2015. The appointment of Lisa Sabin, whose term will expire on May 18th, 2015. The appointment of Timothy Combs, whose term will expire on May 18th, 2015. The appointment of Richard Creviston, whose term will expire on May 18, 2015. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Riverfront Hotel Community Improvement District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I'd like to move for approval of the Riverfront Hotel Community Improvement District Board.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th. Seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment to the Tax Increment Financing Board of Commissioners. The appointment of Christina Bennett, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2018. The reappointment of Philip Cleveron, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2018. The appointment of Jamil Swoboda, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2018. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Tax Increment Financing Board of Commissioners.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we accept these appointments.
Moved by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment to the Residence Inn Downtown Community Improvement District. The appointment of Stephen Abates, whose term will expire on March the 8th, 2015. The appointment of Elizabeth Holtz, whose term will expire on March the 8th, 2015. The appointment of Miss Rennie Boudra, whose term will expire on March the 8th, 2017. The appointment of Damian Parks Wheatley, whose term will expire on March the 8th, 2017. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Residence Inn Downtown Community Improvement District.
You see, I didn't have time to chair the meeting. I move for the approval of mayor's appointments to the Resident Inn Community Improvement District.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment to the Shoto Crossing Community Improvement District. The appointment of Robert Maltby, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2018. The reappointment of Brian Pratt, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2018. The appointment of Philip Halsey, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2018. The appointment of Tracy Coleman, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2018. The appointment of Chris Halsey, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2018. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 7th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Shoto Crossing Community Improvement District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I move for approval of the mayor's appointments to the Shoto Crossing Community Improvement.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment to the 840 East Taylor Community Improvement District. The appointment of Robert Maltby, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2018. The appointment of Brian Pratt, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2018. The appointment of Philip Halsey, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2018. The appointment of Tracy Coleman, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2018. The appointment of Chris Halsey, whose term will expire on December 31st, 2018. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 2nd, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the 840 East Taylor Community Improvement District.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I ask that we accept the appointments for the East 40 East Taylor Community Improvement District.
Moved by the Alderman from the 2nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 12th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment to the Loughborough Commons Community Improvement District. Appointment of David Ramirez, whose term will expire on May the 19th, 2016. The appointment of Franklin Sears, whose term will expire on May 19th, 2016. The appointment of Michael Anthon, whose term will expire on May 19th, 2017. The appointment of Jill Dushinsky, whose term will expire on May 19th, 2017. The appointment of Christopher Bertel, whose term will expire on May 19, 2017. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 11th, you recognize on the mayor's appointment to the Loughborough Commons Community Improvement District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we approve the reappointment of the aforementioned individuals.
Moved by the Alderman from the 11th, seconded by the Alderman from the 23rd. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for appointment to the Magnolia Community Improvement District. The appointment of Matt Carso, whose term will expire on March the 17th, 2016. The appointment of Dan Ayers, whose term will expire on March 17, 2018. The appointment of Christine Chamberlain, whose term will expire on March the 17, 2016. The appointment of Casey Hammond, whose term will expire on March the 17, 2016. The appointment of Quincy Johnson, whose term will expire on March the 17, 2016. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Francis G. Slay, Mayor, City of St. Louis.
Alderman from the 7th. You recognize on mayor's appointment to the Magnolia Community Improvement District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I move for approval of the mayor's appointments to the Magnolia Community Improvement District.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th, seconded by Alderman from the 16th, and the Alderman from the 22nd. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I have from the Office of the President the following correspondence. Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individual a recommendation of the Poet Laureate task to serve the City of St. Louis as an integral Poet Laureate to a 2-year term commencing on January the 1st, 2015. The appointment of Michael Castro, a resident of University City, and whose term will expire on December the 31st, 2016. Mr. Castro shall serve with the objective of celebrating the written and spoken poetic voices of residents, increasing access to poetry throughout all parts of the community, encouraging both the reading and writing of literature, commemorating the metropolitan St. Louis region through works that speak to and for and of our region, and officiating special events throughout his term. I respectfully request your approval of this appointment. Sincerely, Louis E. Reed, President of the Board of Aldermen.
Alderman from the 18th, you recognize.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I move for the approval of the recommendation of the Poet Laureate Task Force.
Moved by the Alderman from the 18th, seconded by the Alderman from the 12th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That's the extent of report of city officials.
We dispense with line item 7. Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? Would anyone like to take any bills off of any of our informal calendars? We dispense with line items 8 through 10, first reading of board bills.
Board Bill 217, sponsored by Alderwoman Young and Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance establishing the Lafayette Square Special Business District containing a severability, effectiveness, and emergency clauses. Board Bill 218, sponsored by Alderwoman Young and Alderwoman Ingracia, an ordinance submitting to the qualified voters residing in the Lafayette Square Special Business District a proposal to levy a tax on real property located in said district, submitting said proposal to the voters of the said district at an election on April the 7th, 2015, and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 219, sponsored by Alderman Rhodey, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor and the comptroller to execute a quitclaim deed to Jarrable Corporation for certain city-owned property located in City Block 5114, property known as 4213 Gibson Avenue, upon receipt of and in consideration a sum of $375,000 and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 220, sponsored by Alderwoman Green, an ordinance confirming the prohibition of the issuance of any package or liquor license for any premises within the boundaries of the 15th Ward Liquor Control District and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 221, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, an ordinance pertaining to competitive bidding and composition of workforce and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 220, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, an ordinance pertaining to construction contracts and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 223, sponsored by Alderman Moore, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 2613 through 17 Marcus. Board Bill 224, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3318 Wisconsin containing a severability clause. Board Bill 225, sponsored by Alderman Conan, an ordinance adopted to establish a citizen commission to be known as the Citizen Commission on the Reduction and Reformation of the Board of Aldermen, which the commission's purpose shall be to collect community input, gather information, conduct community outreach, study, and provide advisory opinions to the Board of Aldermen on the implementation of Ordinance 69185, which measure was passed by the electorate of the city, calls for a restructuring of the Board of Aldermen from a body of 28 aldermen representing 28 wards to a body of 14 aldermen representing 14 wards. Board Bill 226, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, an ordinance recommended by the Board of Public Service, authorizing the 2015 St. Louis Works and 50/50 Sidewalk Program citywide, appropriating $5,500,000 from the Street Improvement Fund containing the mayor's executive orders, contract advertising statutes, and public works emergency clause. Board Bill 227, sponsored by Alderman Villa, an ordinance authorizing the execution of intergovernmental cooperation agreement between the city and Carondelet Commons Community Improvement District and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 228, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission to change the zoning of property from G Local Commercial and Office District to the H Area Commercial District and the J Industrial District, dual zoning of D Multiple Family Dwelling District and G Local Commercial and Office District and the dual zoning of D Multiple Family Dwelling District and H Area Commercial District to the D Multiple Family Dwelling District only in various city blocks and containing an emergency clause. That's the extent of our first reading.
Reference to committee.
To the Streets Committee, Board Bill 226, the Public Safety Committee, Board Bill 220, to the Housing Committee, Board Bill 228, to the Neighborhood Development Committee, Board Bills 223 and 224, and to the Ways and Means Committee, Board Bills 217, 218, 219, 221, 222, and 227. That's the extent of reference to committees.
Madam Clerk, please assign Board Bill number 225 to legislation.
So noted.
All right. Second reading.
Following board bills were reported out of the Ways and Means Committee, Board Bill 201, sponsored by Alderwoman Cruzen and Alderman Williamson, an ordinance establishing the DeBoliver Place Special Business District, setting its boundaries, tax rate, initial rate of levy, subject to the approval of the qualified voters, bonding authority, and use to which tax revenues may be cut, creating a board of commissioners, and containing a severability, effectiveness, and emergency clauses. Board Bill 202, sponsored by Alderwoman Cruzen and Alderman Williamson, an ordinance submitting to the qualified voters residing in the DeBoliver Place Special Business District, submitting said proposal to the voters of said district at an election on April 17, 2015, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 203, sponsored by Alderman Carter, an ordinance recommended by the Planning Commission, authorizing and directing the Treasurer to issue subordinated parking revenue bonds, Series 2014, in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $6,700,000 and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 215, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, and ordinance recommended by the Board of Investment and Apportionment, authorizing and directing St. Louis Municipal Finance Corporation to issue and sell its Forest Park leasehold revenue refunding bond, Series 2015, in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $11 million in order to refund all or a portion of its outstanding leasehold revenue refunding bonds and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 216, sponsored by Alderman Kennedy, and ordinance recommended by the Board of Investment and Apportionment, pertaining to and providing for the issuance of obligations payable under an annual renewable lease agreement, authorizing and directing the execution and delivery in one or more series of lease certificates of participation obligations, evidencing interest in the right to receive rentals to be made by the city pursuant to an annual renewable lease agreement in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $5,500,000 in order to refinance and refund all or a portion of the St. Louis Municipal Finance Corporation lease certificates of participation, Series 2008, outstanding in the principal amount of $5,455,000 pertaining to a severability clause. The following board bills were reported out of the Transportation and Commerce Committee. Board Bill 204, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commissioner, Comptroller, and the Board of Investment and Apportionment, making certain findings with respect to the transfer of up to $13,727,769 of excess monies that the city intends to transfer from Debt Service Stabilization Fund to the Airport Revenue Fund, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 205, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Investment and Apportionment, authorizing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute the Lambert International Airport Wi-Fi Distributed Antenna System Operating Agreement, AL-263, between the City and Concourse Communications Group for the installation, operation, marketing, maintenance, and management of a wireless internet access and distributed antenna system at the airport, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 206, sponsored by Alderman Conway, and ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Investment and Apportionment, authorizing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into a Lambert and execute the Lambert International Airport Lease Agreement, AL-161, between the city, the owner and operator of the airport, and Union Electric Company, doing business as Ameren, Missouri, granting to the lessee certain rights and privileges in connection with the occupancy and use of leased premises for a period of 10 years, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. The following board bill was reported out of the Housing Committee. Board Bill 209, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, and ordinance approving Addendum number 6 to the development plan of Cleves Landing Redevelopment Corporation, and containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. That's the extent of our second reading.
We dispense with line item 14, perfection consent.
Board Bill 153, sponsored by Alderwoman Ingrassia, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2804 through 08 and 2814 through 20 South Compton, and 3151 through 53 Halliday, and 3152 Magnolia, and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 154, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2925 Limp, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 155, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 3453 Wisconsin, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 156, sponsored by Alderman Vollmer, and ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2615 January, containing a severability clause. Board Bill 157, sponsored by Alderman Bosley, and ordinance approving an amended blighting study and a redevelopment plan for amended Hyde Park Scattered Sites 5 redevelopment area, and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 159, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, and ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 3828 through 30 Folsom and 3826 through 32 McRee. Board Bill 180, sponsored by Alderwoman Cruzen, and ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for for 6828 Oakland. Board Bill 181, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 4108 through 10 Castleman. Board Bill 182, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 4957 through 63 Arsenal. Board Bill 184, sponsored by Alderman Balmer, an ordinance approving a blighting and a redevelopment plan for 1918 Edwards and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 185, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 2106 Wyoming. Board Bill 190, sponsored by Alderwoman Young, an ordinance approving a blighting study and a redevelopment plan for 2021 Rutger and containing a severability clause. Board Bill 199, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan for 3838 Flora Place. That's the extent of perfection consent.
Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on the motion for the perfection consent calendar.
Yes, Mr. President, I move that we perfect and consent. We move to approve the perfection consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 17th, entertain a second. Seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move to suspend the rules to move the following board bills to the perfection consent calendar to the third reading consent calendar. Board bills 153, 154, 155, 156, 157, 159, 180, 181, 182, 184, 185, 190, and 199.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, entertain a second. Seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderwoman Young. Alderwoman Young. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Schmid. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderman French. 24 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, and one present.
By your vote, you sustain the motion. Alderman from the 22nd, and move the aforementioned bill to the third reading consent calendar. Madam Clerk, please place the aforementioned bills at the tail end of the third reading consent.
So noted. That's the extent of the perfection consent.
We'll dispense with line item 16, third reading consent.
Board Bills 197, Committee Substitute, 195, 158, 162, 163, 172, 173, Committee Substitute, 176, 179, 183, 194, 196, 153, 154, 155, 156, 157, 159, 180, 181, 182, 184, 185, 190, and 199.
Alderman from the 17th. Alderwoman from the 7th. You recognize on the motion for the third reading consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move for passage and adoption of the third reading consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 7th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 25th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll. It's Been a request for previous roll. Been an objection to previous roll. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderwoman Young. Alderman Conway. Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Schmidt. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderman Conway. Alderwoman Howard. Alderman French. Alderman Ogilvie. 24 aye votes.
By a vote, the Alderman from the 8th is aye. By your vote, you sustain the motion of the Alderman from the 7th and 3rd read and finally passed the aforementioned bills.
25 aye votes.
Third reading, report of engrossments.
Board Bills 197, committee substitute. 177. Board Bill 177, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Airport Commission and the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing 9th supplemental appropriation in the total amount of $2,089,440.64 from the Airport Construction Fund subaccount for the 2009 Series A1 bond issue into the airport schedule FCIP project for the payment of costs for work and services authorized therein and containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 8th, you recognize on third reading, final passage of Board Bill number 177.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for third reading and final passage of Board Bill number 177.
Moved by the Alderman from the 8th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. Any discussion?
I renew my motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we third read and finally pass the aforementioned bill. It's been a request for roll call. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Flowers. Alderman Bosley. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderwoman Young. Alderman Conway.
Aye.
Alderman Ortman. Alderman Vollmer. Alderman Villa. Alderman Arnowitz. Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard. Alderwoman Green. Alderwoman Behringer. Alderman Rhodey. Alderman Kennedy. Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Schmidt. Alderman French. Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro. Alderman Ogilvie. Alderman Cone. Alderman Williamson. Alderman Carter. Alderwoman Cruzen. President Reed. Alderman Moore. Alderwoman Ingracia. Alderwoman Howard. Alderman French. Alderman Ogilvie. 23 aye votes, 1 no vote.
By your vote, you sustain the motion. The Alderman from the 8th and third read and finally passed Board Bill number 177.
Board Bill 178, sponsored by Alderman Conway, an ordinance recommended and approved by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing the Director of Airports and the Comptroller to enter into and execute the First Amendment to the vending concession agreement to the Airport Vending Concession Agreement number AL 245 between the city and Advent containing a severability clause and containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 8th, you recognize on third reading, final passage of Board Bill number 178.
Mr. President and members of the board, I move for third reading and final passage of Board Bill number 178.
Moved by the Alderman from the 8th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th. Alderman from the 8th, please proceed.
I know we discussed this briefly last week, and I don't see that anything has changed between last week. This is a small vending contract. The contractor is a minority contractor. The vending sales have dropped fairly dramatically. This is a situation where the city receives 54% of the gross receipts from those vending machines.
Alderwoman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board, if the Alderman from the 8th would yield.
Alderman from the 8th, will you yield for questions to the Alderwoman from the 1st?
Yes.
Alderwoman from the 1st, please proceed.
Alderman, last week you made it known to the people that sit up there that I was somehow confusing them to make them think that it was not a minority company. But I know that I said it didn't make a difference if it was minority or majority. I wanted a fairness. I wanted all companies who were experiencing a that they weren't getting as much money as they were originally going to get. I don't care if it was a big majority company. I wanted us to be able to look at also their contracts, because the airport used to do quite a bit more business. So I was not ever saying that it had to be a minority company. I was saying the fairness issue, that if it was minority, majority, or whatever. But I have a question. This small minority company, is this the one that did you bring this guy in? Is this a guy, is this a man that lives in the 8th ward that is part of this company?
And as proficient as I am in knowing all of the voters in the 8th ward, I can tell you two things. One is I had never met him before in my life until he came to the airport commission meeting, but he and his wife do live in the 8th ward. But I did not bring him in. I've never met him before.
When I say bring in, so perhaps you should ask a question. I thought you brought him in to the meeting we had at Transportation. I thought that he was your guest at the Transportation meeting when this was originally started. And you're saying that you didn't bring him into the Transportation meeting?
No, as a matter of fact, I think Alderman Vaccaro chaired that meeting.
Okay, but I don't have a question for you. But he is a resident of the 8th ward. Isn't that what you told us then?
I just told you that.
No, you didn't just tell us that. You told us that in Transportation. That's why I knew to ask you that. But I thought you had brought it in. But you did tell us in the meeting in Transportation that he was 8th ward resident. I would have not known to ask that besides that. So thank you. That's my question. I again rise to oppose this bill because I think it's unfair. I've since spoken to several other people who have contracts with vending, and they have talked about how inflexible their ability to be able to negotiate with the people out there. And when I said last week that I had called and spoke to some people and asked when they came here why we weren't renegotiating these contracts, because I do know that we have lost a lot of business. We're not the hub that we used to be. And so and one of the people I'm asking about is not even my great friend, but there's a fairness to things. And I agree that if we're negotiating with this one, that we ought to be doing it for all of them and taking a look at it. And especially if it's a smaller minority company, if we're not going to do that, and if we're going to hold everybody split to the fire, we ought to be fair in how we hold people split to the fire. And if we're going to just say, well, that's what you negotiated and that's what you have to deal with, then we ought to do it for everybody and not just for some favorites of certain people. And for that reason, I'm voting against it. I don't have anything against this particular vending company, but I do think that we have a responsibility to be fair to people who come before us and to look at their situations also. And I don't care if it's minority or majority.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 8th, you're recognized to close.
Right, and last week when the Alderwoman from the 1st had indicated her initial statement, I know that the Alderman from the 27th and some of the other of you in this room had interpreted what she had said is that this was not a minority contractor, and that's why the Alderman from the 27th got up and responded to let all of us collected here know that this was a minority contractor. When we did the Airport Commission hearing on this bill, because all these go to the Airport Commission first, one of the few bills where I grilled people because over how this was working and why we would come back and redo this, unbeknownst to me until after the Airport Commission, and I did support the decision of the Airport Commission that the owner of this company does reside in the 8th Ward. I have no clue where he resides, but I did meet him and his wife, and we were convinced at the Airport Commission that this was the right thing to do. Obviously, all of you know me as a CPA and as an attorney, and tight with a penny down here running that budget committee for 10 years. I don't give up a penny unless it's necessary, and so I protect that taxpayer's money. And if anybody that has a contract that's out at the airport and they're not getting on the agenda at the Airport Commission, they can call me and let me know, and I will make sure that it is on the commission, because I'm willing to listen to anyone on anything, because we want people to be successful both in the city and at the airport, because when these businesses are successful, it generates jobs for our constituents and tax revenues for our coffers, which we utilize to provide city services. So I am open-minded. I will listen to anyone, and I will make sure that anybody that contacts me gets the appropriate hearing. I renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 8th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th, that we third read and finally pass Board Bill number 178. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. There's been a request for previous roll. Hearing no objection, motion. Hearing no objection. Not sure what that was. Was that an objection? Okay. Alderman from the first objected. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus, Alderwoman Flowers, Alderman Bosley, Alderman Moore, Alderwoman Hubbard, Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderwoman Young, Alderman Conway, Alderman Ortman, Alderman Vollmer, Alderman Villa, Alderman Arnowitz, Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Howard, Alderwoman Green, Alderwoman Behringer, Alderman Rhodey, Alderman Kennedy, I didn't hear. Alderwoman Davis, Alderman Schmid, Alderman French, Alderman Boyd, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Ogilvie, Alderman Cone, Alderman Williamson, Alderman Carter, Alderwoman Cruzen, President Reed,
Aye.
Alderwoman Ingracia, Alderwoman Howard, Alderman French, Alderman Ogilvie, 22 aye votes, 2 no votes, 1 present.
By your vote, you stay in the motion. And Alderman from the 8th and third read and finally passed Board Bill number 178.
That's the extent of third reading, report of engrossment, and final passage.
Report of enrollment.
Board Bills 197, Committee Substitute 195, 158, 162, 163, 172, 173, Committee Substitute 176, 179, 183, 194, 196, 177, 178, 153, 154, 155, 156, 157, 159, 180, 181, 81, 182, 184, 185, 190, and 199.
All other business being suspended, the President shall in open session affix his signature hereto to the end that these may become law. First reading resolutions.
Resolution 181, sponsored by Alderwoman Young and Alderwoman Ingracia. The Board of Aldermen established a special business district to be known as the proposed Lafayette Square Special Business District.
Alderwoman from the 7th, you recognize on first reading resolution number 181.
Thank you, Mr. President. I seek unanimous consent.
Hearing no objection, Alderwoman, please proceed.
I move for adoption of Resolution 181.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd. Any discussion? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution 184, sponsored by Alderman Cone. The President of the Board of Aldermen is directed and shall form a Youth and Education Special Committee of the Board of Aldermen to consider issues relevant to promoting educational opportunities, removing barriers to educational opportunities, and educating and separating at-risk youth from behaviors which lead to negative consequences, including dropping out of school.
Alderman from 25th, you recognize on first reading of resolution number 184.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would request that or move that we hear Resolution 184 on the Rules and Engrossments Committee.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 25th. I entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution 185, sponsored by Alderman Ortman, Enterprise Zone for STC Warehouse Incorporated.
Alderman from the 9th, you recognize on the first reading of resolution number 185.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we put Resolution 185 in HUD's committee.
Moved by the Alderman from the 9th. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That's the extent of first reading of resolution.
Second reading?
We have none.
Miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
No meetings next week. Friday, December the 19th, is the Board of Aldermen Christmas party from 5 until 7. That's the extent of my announcement.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 5th.
Mr. President, members of the board, I would like to announce that on December the 20th, the 5th Ward, in conjunction with Courseware Tenant Management Corporation, is having their first annual clothing giveaway. And so if anyone would like to participate, I'm getting rid of my hoarder trade and donating a lot of stuff, and people throughout the entire community is, and it will be free for any families in need or anyone that just wants to be a part of it. So don't hesitate to come by, and if you all have some things you want to donate, please do. And I have the information over here as far as where you can donate it from the event will be Saturday, December the 20th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. On December 15th through that Friday, December the 19th, all donations in forms of clothing, household items, coats, tablecloths, bath rugs, whatever, can be donated to at the Carr Square Community Center at 1629 Biddle. So if anyone have any questions, please contact me.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 20th.
Mr. President, members of the board, I hope that I'm not overstepping myself here. I know that the Alderman from the 4th has a great interest in this and attends this event every year. He just reminded me of this, and I know that we have Jeanette Culpepper, who is here. She just handed me this flyer. I know we're going on a short break. Families Advocating Safe Streets is having their 23rd. Unfortunately, it's been 23 years. But they've done a great job with their New Year's Eve candlelight service, where we commemorate those who have lost their lives to violence in this year. The name of homicide victims from St. Louis City and St. Louis County are read. That will be Wednesday, December 31st, beginning at 4 p.m. at Williams Temple, and that's at 1500 North Union Boulevard. It's a great way for us to remember and then look forward to the coming year. Thank you.
Alderman from the 3rd.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'd like to announce that for all residents of the 3rd Ward tonight, we're going to have that Christmas party where we give away brand new bicycles to all of the kids that come. We only have about 60 bicycles, so the first 60 that get there will get a bicycle for their child. You must bring your voter registration card or proof that you live in the 3rd Ward in order to be able to get one of these bicycles. But there are going to be over 200 additional toys for all the residents that live in the 3rd Ward. It's unfortunate. I wish we could do it for the entire city of St. Louis, but it was the merchants in the 3rd Ward who historically have purchased all of these toys that we give away to the kids in the 3rd Ward. And I'd like to invite each and every alderman here, if you get a chance, come by, take a picture of giving a brand new bicycle away to a kid, and take that picture and hang it up in your headquarters, use it however you want to, because this means that child will have to go by no means other than that bicycle being given to him at Clay School at the Third Ward Christmas party. But there are a lot of kids that get those bicycles. If they don't watch them, 30 minutes after it's all over, those bicycles are gone with somebody else. So I'm suggesting that each and every member of the Board of Aldermen who has a chance to come and give a bicycle to a child, take a picture, and have that picture hung in your headquarters or use it for whatever purpose, folks, because you gave a bicycle to a child who may never have had a brand new bicycle before.
All right, thank you. Alderman from 26.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. This Saturday, December the 20th, next Saturday, I should say, we'll be holding our 10th annual Caring and Sharing event. This is in conjunction with the West End Neighborhood Council and the 26th Ward organization. Between 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., if you're an applicant to fill out for Toys for Tots, that's when you can come receive your toys. So we'll be distributing toys from 10 in the morning to 2 p.m. And then we're going to kick in our party at 3, and the party will be from 3 to 6. So we invite all our constituents to come out, have fun, enjoy the festivities. We appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And that's at Union Memorial Church, too.
All right.
1141 Bell, where we have our ward meetings. Union Memorial Church. Thank you. December the 20th.
Alderwoman from the 2nd.
I don't know if I'm on. Okay. Friday, December 19th, we are having our pet vaccination clinic for dogs and cats at 1022 Bayton from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. in the church's gym, which is Our Lady Holy Cross Church, as well as Saturday from 12 to 3, we will have another clinic for vaccinations. Our distemper shots are $10, rabies shots are $10, and the microchip is $20. You have to call for an appointment just so we can kind of regulate the big dogs from the small dogs and the small cats at 622-3769. As well as next Saturday is our annual Build-A-Bag giveaway, where we will be delivering over 2,000 baskets in the 2nd Ward and 63147 zip code. And if you haven't been on that list, you are directed to call 382-9000. We look forward to this every year. There'll be thousands, not thousands, but many volunteers to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. First, I wanted to make sure that I recognize that Gary Bess is also retiring. He's another gentleman that has been very good to the city. He has done his job well, and I just wanted to recognize and say good wishes to him. But tomorrow is a very busy day. I wanted to recognize that we have a basketball tournament at Vashon High School. It's called a Midwest Showdown Shootout. If you want to OD on basketball, there are 7 games. We have teams coming from Tennessee, Illinois, Indianapolis. It starts at 11 a.m. The last game starts at 8:30 p.m. and it's only $10 for all day. So you can go and come as you please or whatever. Also, we're having the Urban League Guild members. We're having a holiday bazaar at Vashon as well. So Vashon will be busy tomorrow. At that bazaar, there will be vendors, small vendors there with different items. If you haven't done all your Christmas shopping, there'll also be vendors there with gently used items. So it allows you to spread your dollars a little bit further for some who may need to do that. We'll also have guest appearances by sports figures and others in the city. So I'm looking forward to having people come out to that. That's from 3 to 6 p.m. I also wanted to give a congratulations to the Lawrence Group. We are starting the renovation of the Missouri Health Building. So that was exciting the other night. Instead of groundbreaking, we broke the wall. So we're ready with a sledgehammer. So we're ready to get that building going forward. That's a $28 million project. I'm very excited about it. And at that event, we also announced that we'll also have another development on Washington. Third Baptist Church will do a housing development, a garage. That'll be another $21 million project. And also Harbor House, walked through yesterday. As you probably noticed, It is being renovated to give a better quality for transitional housing and programming there. That's a $14 million project. We'll have 58 individual small apartments for those who go through that transition program. So I'm excited about that as well. And I thank Sal Army for their entire project there in the 19th Ward, which totals $54 million. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further? Alderman from the 22nd.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. The 22nd Ward will have its annual holiday party Monday, December 15th from 6 to 9 o'clock at the Omega Center, 3900 Goodfellow. It is for 22nd Ward residents only. However, all my colleagues are invited, encouraged to attend. You'll have a good time. We won't be giving away bikes like the 3rd Ward. We're not that well off. But you will have a good time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. Our 7th annual, the 4th Ward 7th annual Breakfast with Santa, whereby I play Santa Claus. So if any of you are interested, come sit on my knee, you may do that. I don't have anything to give you. But I'm feeding the children. I'm feeding over 150 children, giving them gloves and toys. Also, I'm the Vice President of FAST, Families Advocating Safe Streets, on the 31st, which Alderman Smith had announced for us. Smith. You know what I'm talking about. He just made that announcement for me, whereby on the 31st, I just received the announcement. Families Advocating Safe Streets, 23rd Annual New Year's Eve Candlelight Service to commemorate those who lost their lives to violence in 2014. The names of the homicide victims from St. Louis City and County will be read Wednesday, December the 31st, 2014 at 4 p.m. at the Williams Temple, Church of God in Christ, 1500 North Union. Be there. God bless.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I would just like to remind people that Candy Cane Lane is the 6500 block of Murdoch in the 16th Ward in the city of St. Louis, and they collect each evening for a different charity. So if you're coming down Candy Cane Lane, remember to bring a little extra change because it goes to many great charities here in the region. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderman from the 17th, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Mr. President, I'm starting to realize all these changes that are going to happen as a result of the Alderwoman from the 7th leaving us. The first is I think every session I always ask her for an ink pen every time we're down here, so she won't be next to me to give me an ink pen. So that's one adjustment. And the other adjustment, which I'm very happy about, is my colleague from the 18th Ward will be taking over this responsibility of making these motions. So our clerk won't have to be chasing me around next meeting anymore, reminding me of this. But I would like to move that we excuse the older people from the 6th and 14th Wards.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from 25th. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn the Board of Aldermen until our next meeting on January the 9th next year.
Moved by the Alderman from the 17th, seconded by the Alderman from the 20th. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Stand adjourned.